Welcome to Mistakes Were Made, a podcast about non-monogamy for messy people like us. I'm Sarah, a queer therapist, writer, parent, and journalist.
And I'm Sarah's husband, Alex, a communications professional and educator.
And I'm Jessica, resident monogamist and podcast producer.
Today is our season 2 finale. And we have sound effects. And today's episode, we're doing Polyamory Mythbusters. So we're going to talk about some common misconceptions about non-monogamy.
We're going to put some Mentos into Coke bottles. We're going
to blow up a car, and we're going to talk about things, misconceptions, perceptions about non-monogamy, things that might be making you feel like you're weird or bad or like you aren't good at it. And we're going to bust them shit.
Bust them.
We're going to bust them. We need a busted sound effect.
Yeah,
we have 2 sound effects. Sad trombone and ding, 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 ding. And but before we dive into that, you're going to be hearing a lot of those sounds. Probably that's going to be the bulk of the podcast. So if you don't like it, you can just tune out right the fuck now.
You know, it took us all the way to the end of season 2 for me to finally convince you all to have podcast, like live sound effects on the podcast. Yeah. So I have arrived.
Right. Next season, we'll be back. We'll be back next season with a huge sound effects board.
Each one of us has our own sound effects board.
Yeah. But before we dive into the myths and bust them, we have a few housekeeping items, but housekeeping sounds boring, so let's call them exciting updates. From the world of mistakes were made. Okay, update number 1. Headline, episode, upload, kerfuffle.
Yeah, talk about mistakes were made.
Oh.
I made a mistake. I uploaded and this is how I've been feeling ever since this happened. Sad trombone. I uploaded an early draft of our last episode. And so the top had been edited, but there's a large section in the middle where my husband's caregiver was out on the sidewalk. And I had to go out there and bring groceries inside and manage the whole situation. And so we were on a little break. So there's some behind the scenes sound in there. So if your podcast app downloaded the episode right away, you might have that old version. Just undownload, re-download before you listen, or stream the episode. The cleaned up one is there.
I feel like you're making people want to hear that additional content.
You will get 15 solid minutes of Mads, Zach, Alex, and I looking out the window, just being like, "What's going on? Was that an accident? No, I think that's supposed to be happening." That's a lot of groceries.
We're like talking about Jessica's body language and stuff. Anyway, okay, now we're doing it again, you guys, so we should probably focus up. But thank you to the listeners who let us know about that. It will never happen again. We've docked Jessica's pay by 50% for the last episode, so... but also, it's totally okay. Everybody makes mistakes, and that is a very easy mistake to make.
And as we talk about all the time on the show, perfect is boring.
Yeah. Fuck perfect. Yay! Speaking of imperfect things, we've been meeting for like weeks, episode after episode. We forget to plug. Sarah and I are in a band called Bloodstar, and we just released an EP, and it's sort of, would you say it's like related, kind of? What do you think, Sarah?
I mean, it is poly, queer, alt country. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's about heartache and crushing and sex and being sex.
That's how they call it out in the country.
Out in the country. And just, loving people in all kinds of weird ways. So, yeah, I would say it's related.
And I'm one of the singers, and the other singer is somebody that Sarah dated.
That's right.
So you can
it's
see,
really good.
It's People say it's good. A lot of people are saying how good it is. It's Bloodstar with no space. It's on Spotify and Apple Music and shit. If you do Bloodstar with a space, Blood Space Star, then you will hear a metal band that's pretty pretty sick as well.
Also good.
Yeah, might be polyaffirming
Are they
metal. I'm not
polyamorous?
sure.
I don't know.
Probably. Most metalheads are. We'll get to that later. And Sarah, you wanted to circle back to the episode where we talked about consent and the 3-minute game. What was the title of that episode? I can't even remember exactly, but desire?
Owning your desire.
Yeah, owning your desire.
Yeah, that is an episode that I certainly have had a lot of really interesting conversations with folks about over the weeks and months since we did it. And in that episode where we were kind of talking about our own relationship to desire and what we learn about it or struggle with it in regards to polyamory and queerness, you and I talked a fair amount about the 3-minute game, Betty Martin's. It's like a interpersonal, therapeutic, kind of like sex positive game where you get the chance to talk about what you desire to do to people, what you have desire to have done to you. And you and I explored the ways in which that has worked well for us and the ways in which it's been kind of a struggle. And I got some really great listener feedback, listener/crush feedback. And she mentioned that actually Betty Martin suggests that if you're with a new partner or really intending to do it for like therapeutic exploratory purposes first, that the 3-minute game should have body parts limited to the elbow down. And I think the way you and I had been talking about it throughout the episode was the idea that
all
like,
the way.
well, any and all parts of the body or acts would be on the table. And we were kind of spent some time talking about how that feels like a big sort of vulnerability ask of people.
Yeah.
And we kind of like never resolved that. We sort of like were talking about it and thinking about it, but left it there. So this listener was like, hey, this is actually like a way you can do it that addresses that.
Yeah, I think it takes a baseline of trust to do like it in a fully like full body sexual situation. When you say elbow down, you mean like hands and forearms.
Yes, that was my impression.
Not
When I
like
hear
down to
elbow
the
down, I'm
ground.
like, just keep it below the waist. Which would be a different version of it.
Experience.
And could be cool. I don't know.
So anyway,
I find it's less intimate. But it's just foot stuff,
just pure
whatever. Just
foot and knee.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thought I'd mention that. I thought it was great feedback. I love when we hear back from listeners about, what they know about topics that we've covered or things that we got wrong or might add in. And I also thought it was just like a cool addendum to that episode.
I'm Mike. We're the experts. Don't question us.
How dare you?
We're here to tell you what the fuck is what. And we don't want to know what you think.
We read 2 websites and a Wikipedia page about that, and
for sure. Actually, that episode, I have talked to a lot of people about it as well, and I'm always like, we really shit the bed on explaining that game. So whatever, it's fine. Mistakes were made. We can't all be perfect, as is the theme of this episode. Speaking of experts, today we are going to dig into facts and falsehoods about non-monogamy, and we're going to try and gamify this a little bit. So we are going to talk about some of the misconceptions. We've done a bunch of exhaustive research.
we spent time on Instagram.
Okay. Sarah's research is all from Instagram. I read skimmed some academic papers, and half of them had stuff about statistics that I didn't understand, and was like standard deviation. I was like, what? Close. I really wish I had taken a statistics class. You went to business school. Did you ever take a statistics class?
Yeah, I hate stats. I was just talking about that yesterday. But
I took a statistics class.
Oh, yeah. You use it all the time in your therapy practice,
Absolutely,
I'm sure.
yes.
Sarah, what does standard deviation mean?
So anyway, about that statistics class, I took it pass-fail.
Okay. Standard deviation is like how kinky you are, right? Like how deviant you are.
The standard,
There's a standard
of
deviation.
deviance in any given situation.
I'd like to think I'm well beyond the standard deviation. Okay, so should we dive right in?
Let's do it.
Who wants to go
Do it.
first?
I think you should maybe go first because this game is your vision.
Okay.
And then you can
Okay.
Set the scene.
set the scene.
Okay, so Don't overuse the dinger, okay? Respect the dinger.
I don't know if this has come up yet in the podcast, but Alex has a Capricorn moon, and I feel like it's going to be on display here. On beautiful, full-bodied display.
Yeah, it probably is. Okay, so my first topic is about... I'm going to dive right into stigmas about polyamory and non-monogamy in general. And I want to ask the two of you, what percentage of millennials, so we're talking about just millennials here, think that committed couples should be monogamous?
Okay.
Millennials.
And
You think about your answer.
yes,
Okay.
can I ask a few questions, clarifying questions
Yes,
about
please.
millennials?
Yeah.
This would be folks who are like 30 and above at this point.
30 and above. Well, okay, this study did not have anybody younger than millennials, so I have no idea what that means, but there was, for some
But
reason, studies like this are like, for people who are from the silent generation, aka people 80. So,
Wait,
there's-
millennials are the youngest people
They were the
had?
youngest people in the survey, yeah. But I don't think that meant that they're counting, they probably just didn't survey people younger than probably 25.
25.
And then let's say millennials.
Because,
goes
like,
up to
in a
20.
lot of these generational things, like, we're technically elder millennials.
Yeah,
like, the
they're elder
oldest
millennials.
possible millennials are
Yeah.
the youngest
I would just think
Gen
about
X.
people your age and a little bit younger.
Okay. So what percentage...
Don't
think-
overthink it.
That's my official feeling about someone saying don't overthink it to me. My favorite thing to do is overthinking things. Okay, so what percentage think that committed couples should be monogamous?
Yes, said that they somewhat agreed with the statement that
I'm gonna
committed couples
say-
should be monogamous.
65%.
Yeah, I'm going to go with, like, 80.
Okay, I don't know how to use the
Dinger for two people.
for two people. But you were spot on, Sarah. 63%.
No shit.
Yeah, totally.
She's an expert.
Yeah, so that's and then I guess you might imagine for older generations that number was even higher. So this was from a study by the the Institute for Family Studies, which, if the name doesn't start to kind of give it away, is clearly a very family-oriented, probably sort of like conservative think tank thing. But the research is like clean, But I think the framing of a question, like, somewhat agree that committed couples should be. There's some leading stuff inside of that framing in that question, maybe, but still seems like it's about right.
But that's interesting. I mean, obviously, I guessed much higher than you did, Sarah, and probably you have a better sense of this than I do, maybe because you're an expert. But, like, yeah, it's surprising to me. Like, I
That
would
it's that
definitely think,
high?
like, even younger than millennials would have, like, a
Right.
much higher tolerance for it. But I definitely think of people, like, around our age and older as having close to zero tolerance
Right.
for non-monogamy.
So this is where I fly in with like my clarifying questions about this.
Yeah.
I'm curious if they are talking about like cheating or ethical
Good
non-monogamy.
question. Yeah, the question is, and it does say that committed couples should be monogamous, so it doesn't say,
Should be, it's like there
Yeah.
might be a kind, I'm reading between the lines there, and part of what I hear is an acceptance that there's a certain amount of infidelity that is happening. I'm not necessarily hearing there's more than half of a generation that thinks that ethical non-monogamy is a totally normal relationship structure, but
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know.
Okay, follow-up question. So for all age groups, not just millennials, but I assume people 18 and over probably. This is from another study from the Kinsey Institute. For people who aren't personally interested in polyamory themselves, so people will say, it's not for me, what percent do you think say that they respect people who do it?
I'm going to let Jessica answer this one.
Let's see. Okay, they say, not for me,
Yeah.
but maybe okay for you. We're debating how many of them say it's okay for
Yeah.
you to do it.
Yep. They're not like
don't-
you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think most people are like, ew. I would say pretty high ew levels.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm like in the 85, 90%.
85-90% are you.
Yeah.
So the people who say that they do respect people would be like 15.
Yeah. Or oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
1 in 7 people.
Judgy.
And again, these are people who say they're not personally
That's
interested.
interesting, yeah.
And we can get into the person who's personally interested later. But of the people who say they're not, yeah, all of the vast majority are pretty judgmental, or pretty much not cool. 85%.
What's y'all's take on that? Like, when you just are thinking about like broad frameworks for where someone's head is, if they're like, this isn't for me, and now they're considering it for someone else entirely, not for themselves.
fear, 100%
Yeah.
Tell
fear.
me more.
Like, I think that it feels threatening to their own, fragile feeling partnerships. It's like, wait a minute, I thought I had locked this down and I just took care of the whole life partner thing, and I don't want to ever have to think about it again.
Yeah,
That's what it says to me.
Totally. So all week in my practice and kind of just in life, I've had this kind of theme going on, which is you'll hear someone say something or kind of a statistic like this or whatever, and you'll be like, who's that talking? Right? Who's that talking? And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's Puritanism. Because that is no, it's not just about what's right for me. It's about what is okay for everyone else. And I think when we're in the realm of sex and bodily autonomy and choices, I mean, we certainly have this on display flagrantly in our culture right now with what's been going on with reproductive justice. It's just no, this doesn't end with what's right or wrong for me. I also really have to know what you are allowed or not allowed to do.
What do you think the number would be for, I don't have it in front of me, but for respect people who are in homosexual relationships? It's probably 50. I feel like I've seen surveys of Americans approval of gay marriage, right? That's beyond just I respect that relationship, but I think that people should be able to get married. That's above 50% in this country. So it's kind of interesting that that says to me that there's a cultural normalization that has happened for things like gay marriage and homosexuality that has not happened for polyamory or non-monogamy.
I mean, and then I'm like, who's talking? Capitalism.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, I guess what
How dare you?
Capitalism. I think, we've covered this on the show quite a bit, but this idea that one of the most successful ways that gay marriage has been more mainstream accepted is for it to be absorbed by capitalist values, to show couples having traditional weddings and buying houses and lots of cars and look, they're just like us. And so I guess there's a part of me that is curious. I mean, capitalism is very good at this. Could capitalism take polyamory and build an arc that supports it out of that practice? And is that what would be required for the ick factor to go down for people? I'm kind of down a weird road here, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like it would just be more representation in media and culture too.
Yes, that definitely also is important.
Okay, should we go on to the next one?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay.
So this one I'm going to put out. I'm actually going to choose which one of you I'm asking, if that's okay, for the sake of the sound effects.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Jessica, this is a survey about whether or not your sexual relationship with your long-term partner has changed after opening up. So the first part of this question will be true or false. What did respondents who are polyamorous say in answering this question? Has your sexual relationship with long-term partner changed after opening up?
I mean, I would say definitely, just because having sex with a new person, there are some things that are the same, but there's always something that is different. So I have to imagine that you're going out there, having sex with a new person, and bringing whatever you learned back home. Yay!
Yes, correct. Yeah, so overwhelmingly respondents answered that was true, I think to the tune of about 75-ish%. The follow-up question that I have there is, among those folks... Yes, Alex?
No, I'm just reading the thing. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so you're cheating.
No,
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I was spaced out when you were asking the questions. I was trying to catch up.
Among those folks who answered, 75% answered, yes, it has changed. Would you say the majority have said that the sexual relationship with their long-term partner has changed for the better, for the worse, stayed neutral?
I mean, so, okay, let's think through these different options, right? I think, God, I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. So, I mean, stayed neutral, like that doesn't align with the first part of the question, right? Because we established that it changed. And I think like it would make me really sad to think of it getting worse. It maybe would mean that like monogamy, non-monogamy wasn't really like there's maybe some other issues going on. But also full disclosure, I think I remember you guys talking about this on an earlier podcast episode. So I'm going to go with it changed for the better.
Yep.
Yay.
Wow. What percentage said that?
It was... So the statistics aren't going to like perfectly align because I parsed the question for dramatic effect. But essentially, 37% of respondents said, yes, it has changed and it's gotten better. And then 10% said, yes, we're now into group play. 25% said, yes, we've stopped having sex together. And that's like, yes, it's changed and we've stopped having sex together. And then 27% said, no, it has not changed. It's about the same as it's always been.
So it's either neutral or then about half the people are like, it's better because of these kind of two possible different scenarios. And then some people are like, we just don't have sex with each other anymore, which is interesting because like that is not necessarily
worse,
a negative outcome. Yeah,
right.
It might be that you were, sexually incompatible in some way and you figured out how to take that part of your relationship elsewhere and more power to you.
Yeah, so what is the Mythbuster here? I'm kind of curious. I want to ask both of you, like, what would be your assumptions about this maybe before we opened up, Alex, or before, Jessica, you were producing a podcast about non-monogamy? And what's like the arc of having a different understanding?
That your sex life, I feel like of the people from the previous question who are like you, that's not good. It would be that it's going to harm your sex life with your primary partner because you're going to be getting it somewhere else.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's just like consistent depictions of like people, cheating on their primary partner, say, and like the person being cheated on, like imagining the sex that their partner is having, and it's like the most amazing sex in the entire world that anyone has ever had, right? Like, yeah,
it's like satin sheets, like people just like manicured nails from the 80s, just like gripping satin
saxophones playing in the background,
like flower petals just like raining down on candles.
We're really showing our age here. Our sexual awakenings were in 1989.
Okay, so that was 100% Lady in Red for anyone who remembers that movie.
Well, yeah.
So it's interesting. I was curious what you would say about that, Alex. So what were your kind of assumptions about that before we opened up? How have they changed? What do you think?
My assumptions about how it would impact our sex life, I can't say that I didn't even consider. Yeah, no, I'm trying to think I'm serious, I guess. Like, I don't remember being like, that being one of the impact. I guess I assumed that our sex life would stay the same or improve because like I didn't feel like our reason for opening our marriage was really like sexual. It wasn't about like sex between us and like, problems in that realm or something like that. It was probably just, unrelated to that.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Jess?
Well, I was just going to say, like, if we follow that sort of like script or stereotype, the Lady in Red situation, like, the idea is supposed to be that then like the partner is like getting this amazing rose petal covered sex elsewhere, and then coming home and being like, ugh, like my partner is boring.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Rather
Yeah.
than actually, like, in practice, it seems like they're like, ooh, maybe I'm going to bring home some satin sheets.
Right. These cotton sheets. Why don't we have
That's
satin?
what our problem is.
Why don't we put a mirror on the ceiling like my girlfriend has? That's interesting. I feel like that's another kind of like cliche, or it's like a little bit deeper down the road stereotype or like idea that you're like, I learned some moves from it or whatever, and then like it spiced up my sex life, which I guess is like maybe that's valid, but I feel like what the actual truth there is probably something along the lines of oh boy, Sarah's trying to sad trombone me. This is very distracting.
Okay, so what you were saying is that
There's
maybe
the trope.
of I learned a new move out in the world and I'm bringing it back to sex up my spice life.
Right, sex up my spice life. And what's actually probably more happening is like you're thinking more critically about your sexual relationship with your primary partner because you're having sex with other people, and so it's like, you know, I don't think it's actually about like the physical things that you do necessarily. It could be about that, but it's probably more about like intentionality. And like if you're in a long-term monogamous relationship, you probably get into like patterns of the ways that you have sex and your orientation to it, and like whether it feels, you know, exciting, and like how you do it, and what are the dynamics between wanting to and not wanting to, and going elsewhere and having sex with other people is like kind of inevitably going to impact that in various different ways. And probably for us up front, we probably did a lot of like internal like competitive stuff, and we're like, oh, you know I was like, oh, Sarah's like sleeping with somebody else, so like when we sleep together, I'm gonna like try and bring it you know,
Cute.
try and bring my A game.
Sweet.
That's very cute.
I guess so. You didn't do that?
No, I know what you mean. But I think in a way, the framing that I would put on it was just suddenly I recognized like how valuable and special having sex with you was. Mm-hmm. You know, like that's probably the way I would say it. Like,
Right.
Suddenly it wasn't just like, well, we are the two people that get to have sex with each other in this scenario. It was like challenging and exciting and made a lot of sense that there were other people out there that wanted to have sex with you and were enjoying having sex with you. And it made me, I think, freshened up my understanding of just like what a wonderful partner you are in a way.
Yeah.
Aw.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes, I agree. That is like, I think the realm of fantasy sex with other people can often be in a realm of, it is by definition maybe in the realm of fantasy when you're in a monogamous relationship, right? And like fantasy and reality are typically very different. So you might think like, this is how it will be, satin sheets, rose petals, yada yada, tremendous orgasms that shake the earth, and, volcanoes and tsunamis and such natural
What
disasters.
80s movie is this?
I think it's like a series of disaster movies.
Oh, okay. You're like, that I happened to be watching as I was going through puberty.
Yeah, exactly. But then, like, what it actually is like, yeah, it might make you appreciate much. I would say it's just as likely to make you appreciate sex with your primary partner because it's hard to, like, you don't have the intimacy, the trust, all of that stuff that you've maybe learned to take for granted, come to take for granted with your primary partner, and then, like, you go out and, like, have these experiences that, like, let's be real, going out and fucking other people is not likely to be, like, a mind-blowingly fun experience out the gate, right? And I feel like I've heard this pretty consistently that, like, you know, you will get out there and, like, it will be hard, you will feel unsafe, you will feel uncomfortable. I feel like most men that I've talked to who, like, will disclose this level of stuff will have, like, some kind of, like, problems performing with a new person the first time, like when they first, if they've been sleeping with only their wife or primary partner for years and then, like, try to go sleep with somebody else. Like, I think that's super common. It's not blowing anybody's mind, at least right at first, probably. What do you think?
I think that's true for most people.
Yeah.
I think it really can depend, and I'm sort of drawing on my therapeutic practice and experience, that it really depends where and how people feel safe and what kind of challenges around intimacy they might have. And for some people, like really being present to the sexual experience is actually a little bit easier if there isn't a lot of emotional intimacy or relational intimacy. And for some people, it's the opposite, and for some people, it depends. But I think that all kind of points to your conclusion here, which is to say, like, there is a really strong narrative in our culture that whatever sex you're having is not the great sex that other people are having. And I have been thinking about that so much this week, actually, interpersonally and in my practice.
Because you've been having amazing sex.
Because finally I've been having the cinematic sex that you all wish you were having. It's got me wondering why. Like, what is that about the culture that we live in, and the way we think about sex and our relationships, that there is always this sense that you're doing it wrong, or the great sex is just out of reach, or that like other people are having great sex, or your partner's having great sex with other people. There's like some just like I keep coming up with the term FOMO. It's just FOMO is just so present.
FOMO, and it's like that best question for the best.
Best question.
Always like feeling like all of our culture is like basically always like things could be better.
Right. Someone's getting something
and then
better
people,
than you.
Like
right?
sort of almost like weaponize the idea that they're having the best of something. Right?
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's going to be annoying if I say that this is capitalism again.
Ooh,
is that going to be annoying?
No, I love that. I'm here for it.
It totally is.
Right.
I mean, I just come back to the idea of scarcity and competition and the isolation that instills inside of us. Like this sense that we are always maybe missing out, always maybe not as good as someone else, always maybe, it's just this constant insecurity that's just sort of roiling.
Well, and plus porn. I mean, which is related to capitalism, but like, if your exposure to fantasy sex is through porn, most porn is like, I feel like there's not very much porn where people are like, well, that was okay. I didn't come, but it's cool.
But I'm really appreciating getting to know you better.
He said really make
Should we go get some not the best tacos in town, but maybe just like some okay ones?
Best tacos.
Right. Abortive sex and average tacos.
But there is something beautiful about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's humanity right there.
Yeah. But so depictions usually depict like some sort of supreme superlative thing, right? It's a better story or is more appealing. So you're gonna assume that everybody's having something better. The FOMO thing, like you're talking about,
which keeps us from each other. I do really think that this is the way these oppressive systems get internalized and keep us from intimacy with other people. Is that sense of competition, of scarce resources. The idea that opening up your relationship and your partner having sex with other people would immediately mean that your sex was bad or not good enough or would get worse. Also, it's just straight scarcity.
Yeah.
That there's very fixed amount of intimacy, of love, of joy, of pleasure, and it's going to get spent somewhere else.
Right.
And I struggle with this, so I want to say I am not an exception to that rule. But it is something I've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah. And I think I've heard you guys say, and Madeline and Zach were talking about this last week too, and this is what I think is unexpected, that seeing other people finding your partner attractive, how great is that, right? And helps you appreciate your partner in a new way, like you were just saying. Yeah, but that's not part of the narrative, the dominant narrative about this. And
if I could segue back to what you were saying in the first myth that we busted, or when we were talking about what percentage of people think that polyamory is icky, and the percentage was high, it was 80%, and you were but 50% of the population says that homosexuality is fine for others, whether or not it's fine for me, for one. I am coming back to this because I think it's there's some important distinction here around homosexuality and queerness. And like, if you were to ask the majority of the population, like, how do you feel about people being queer? Or even if you didn't use that word, but you were like, people in all of these non-traditional relationships, you know, whether they're like non-binary or trans or, you know, I think that number of acceptance would go down for homosexuality. And that feels kind of worth saying to me because I think the more we are kind of challenging norms around like how we live and these ideas of scarcity and like being in non-traditional community with each other, the higher the ick factor is for the culture at large. I don't know. That might be a tangent, but I just thought of it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I also think that last statistic about like the approval or the ick factor, like people are probably a lot of times just like really in their heads equating polyamory to cheating, right? Like these aren't necessarily people who have like done a deep dive when they're answering the question into like what are we actually talking about, and a lot of them might just be like, yeah, cheating is wrong. I think of, you know, when I think polyamory, I think cheating. I think that's wrong, so I don't approve of it, which is like obviously not accurate, but it is like a relatable instinct or whatever.
And I guess that has come up multiple times in the statistics so far, is like, are we really sure that we're like holding steady for people knowing the difference between infidelity and non-monogamy?
Yeah. Okay, I've got another question. This is a dual question for Jessica and Sarah. One question for each one.
Got it. Can't wait.
Sarah, what percentage of people do you think say that they desire to be polyamorous of Americans?
General population,
Gen Pop, and I assume it's excluding people who are currently polyamorous, but that's not too many. Jessica, what percentage of people in America have a cat?
Okay.
All right. Do you want me to go first? Okay. What percentage of people in this country want to be polyamorous? Say they want to be polyamorous. I'm going to say 20%.
What percentage of people have a cat? I mean, it should be 100%. That is.
Yeah, so you're advocating for government-mandated cat ownership.
Everyone would be happier.
Chicken in every pot and a cat in every.
I guess people who are allergic to cats force them to have cats.
Well, they could just get those anti-allergy shots.
Yeah, they're
or a hairless.
strangely cute. The hairless cats, not the allergy shots. 50%.
Way off.
How many
The
people have
number
cats?
is the same. 16%.
16
of Americans say they desire to be polyamorous, and only 16% of Americans own a cat.
Oh my God.
So this was from a
Literally
Kinsey
shocked.
Institute study, and
This is shocking.
and this researcher Amy Moores from Chapman University and a research fellow at the Kinsey Institute talks a lot about polyamory prevalence studies, and she often like cross-references those things to say like, oh, polyamory seems pretty rare, but in fact, you know, it's the same. No, do you know somebody who has a cat? Then you probably know somebody who desires to be polyamorous.
That's
right?
so interesting.
What if I barely know anyone that doesn't have a cat?
Those people are all polyamorous.
Wait, what number did you say again, Sarah? My head is
Sarah
like,
said 20%.
I said 20%.
So she's real close.
Okay.
She gets a ding.
Okay.
She gets a
Yeah.
ding.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job.
Okay, and then
Fascinating.
What is interesting is cross-reference that with the ick factor. It's basically like there's more people who desire to be polyamorous, who say they desire to be polyamorous, than people who said that it was okay for other people to be. So clearly these statistics are suspect, but two
People are
different
like,
studies.
I can't have this thing that you can have, so therefore
So it's
you're
wrong.
gross.
Yeah.
Right? Which,
I mean, basically,
Not
that's just at the
surprised.
bottom of all politics in this
Exactly.
country
Right.
forever and ever.
Yes.
Amen.
Right, yeah.
yeah.
And so just to dig down, like people who have experience with polyamory, should you guys want to guess what percentage that is, or do you want to? What should I just tell you?
The percentage of people who have experience with polyamory.
Yeah. So just talking about prevalence.
Ethical polyamory.
I mean, it said I have been involved in polyamory. I think anybody who said that, it's not like had
I have
multiple
been
partners.
cheated
It's
on.
like
Right.
have been involved. But obviously, the polyamory term is like probably more specific. It is more specific than non-monogamy. But
I'm sticking with 20%.
you think 20% of people have been involved in?
Yeah. Have been involved. Yeah. 10%.
Yeah, Jessica's got it. 10.7%, according to this survey from 2021. So it's not a huge percentage, but also we're talking about the entire population. So you got to count all those extremely old people who might be doing that. Don't mean to be ageist, but it's certainly less prevalent in older generations.
What better moment in your life to explore polyamory than
Yeah.
in your golden years?
Don't worry about
Good point.
pregnancy.
Good point. Yeah, fuck with your adult children a little bit.
Yeah.
So fun. So fun, y'all.
All right, so coming back out of the break, I want to ask you guys a couple follow-up quiz questions about the prevalence of polyamory. For different groups. So I'm going to say the name of a kind of demographic, yeah, a demographic spectrum, and you're going to tell me if you think it's a predictor of whether you would be polyamorous or not.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one is political affiliation. Are conservatives or liberals more or less likely to be polyamorous? Jessica's nodding
I'm
yes.
saying yes.
I don't know
Sarah's
why
saying
I'm
no.
shaking my
her
head no. But I am shaking my head no.
Yeah, you're right, Sarah. It's not a predictor. Political affiliation is not a predictor of your likelihood to be polyamorous or to desire to be polyamorous.
This might have something to do with how many accidental dates with conservatives I've
Ooh, yeah.
All right, what about education
What about
level?
family values?
I know, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. What about education level?
Yeah.
Sarah's shaking her head
Sarah
no.
says no.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what I think about that. Yeah. Okay. I think Sarah's smart. I'm going to follow her.
Sarah says no,
lead.
and do you think it's exactly the same?
Yeah.
Okay, follow-up question. Are highly educated people more likely to be polyamorous or lower educated people?
Oh, you were asking before, do I think that it's exactly there? I got you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think lower educated people are more likely to be polyamorous.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is one of the things that's a predictor of experience with polyamory is lower education levels correlates, which is interesting.
Interesting.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, no, I would have guessed the opposite.
Why?
Like, I mean, I think that there is a way that it can seem kind of like lifestyle or liberal elite, coastal elite, snobby kind of thing, right? That's why I would have thought that, like, leftists or progressives are more likely to be poly. And I don't want to, I feel like I feel bad about this, but
I totally understand why there's a kind of cultural instinct in that direction. And this is back to my super predictable and annoying, is capitalism, baby.
Right.
Because I think my gut instinct is the better you are at the more successful you are in capitalism, the more you have to play by the rules.
So you would expect that rich people would be less likely to be polyamorous than poor people.
Yeah, I guess with that same idea in mind.
It's the same.
Interesting.
It's the same.
And you would expect that people on the coasts are more likely to be polyamorous than people in middle America.
Yeah.
I would expect that too.
Also the same.
The same.
Yeah.
Well, they have fewer distractions in the middle of the country.
And you would
My
expect
liberal
that
coastal elite.
religious people who of different religions or like, you know, reporting of religion would have an impact on the prevalence of polyamory.
Oh God, I don't know.
So not
about
how
that.
religious you are, but which religion you are, I guess, including atheism as a religion or agnosticism.
Including that, I mean, I feel like if you report a religion, you would be less likely to be poly than if you don't report a religion, I guess.
Like, would the prevalence be the same or more or less for Jews, Muslims, Christians?
Oh, I guess I would
atheists?
say like non-affiliated or atheists or agnostics, like people that are not actively part of organized religions would be more likely to be polyamorous.
Yeah.
That's a shocker to
It's
me.
the same across all religious, or, you know, statistically the same across all religions.
That really surprises me.
And same thing for race and ethnicity, too. What about for gender?
Oh, I think that's probably the same.
You think men and women are more just as likely to?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
Who do you
men more likely.
Yeah. So in terms of like actual experience with polyamory, the only predictors are men are more likely to have been, and people with lower educational levels are more likely to be or have experience with polyamory. And all of those other factors, it's roughly equal.
That's
numbers of
fascinating.
reporting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all the other factors being religion, geography,
Race,
wealth,
ethnicity,
race,
wealth, income, yeah. Political
Education
affiliation.
levels.
Well,
So-
not education levels.
Oh, not education levels. Okay.
So the only things that are predictors are if you're a man and if you have a lower level of education.
Yep.
What do you all care to freely speculate? I mean, obviously we're not going to get to the bottom of why that is, but I am really curious what direction you might speculate in.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely like a big myth for me. I had assumed that you could just kind of draw a demographic picture of a person who was polyamorous or who was likely to be polyamorous, and they would be like us, like highly educated people. It's also, though, but I think this also boils down to like partly your assumption that more other people are just like you. Like their parallel comparative, like the cat thing, their comparative statistical rate for people who have experience with polyamory is people who have graduate degrees. Only 10% of people in the United States have graduate degrees.
Wow.
As well. So they're obviously not the same 10% as are polyamorous, but like, you know, I would just, if you asked me that, I would say 25% because all three of the people sitting at this table have graduate degrees, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. I always come back to, this is me like freely speculating, and it's not all going to hang together, but it's just, is it like a feeling I have? I always feel like the nuclear family and the kind of like accessibility of it and the myth of it and like how powerful that is has something to do with your relationship to polyamory, but I don't know how that helps us here.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably why I would have said folks who are queer, I would say, are who I think of as being like the demographic predictor for polyamory, in part because the traditional nuclear family is already not available to them in the same way, and so they're already kind of like in a place where they get to make up relationships as they want to and need to. And I guess that's like where my mind goes.
Yeah, this survey found their rates of desire to be involved in polyamory or like to experience, desire to be polyamorous was higher for sexual minorities and for younger adults versus older adults, but I don't know if it was actually like manifest as such.
Yeah.
And I wonder, there's like other things I'm always thinking about, like the kind of economics of behavior. And so like men being polyamorous or non-monogamous, that makes me think about like working class men who travel for work. Right? Like, so men who are in seasonal work or transportation or, you know, something where they're not at home all the time.
Yeah, there probably is like a lot of, I mean, this is where the semantics come in too, but there's probably a lot of cultural presentations of polyamory that are not the ones that we would think of. Like, for instance, I know it's like there's definitely like a trope of like somebody who's like working in this country and has a family in another country. Like, it's very frequent, especially for men, that they would have like kind of, you know, have relationships here and a family back home that they're supporting with their right.
Or
I'm
even
sure
just
there's a
like
ton of
things
other
like
examples like that.
you and I were watching a dumb show about like rock and roll stars or whatever, and like there's the And there's like at one point that sort of cliche moment where the primary partner lady's like, what happens on tour stays on tour. Like,
Right.
do what you gotta do, but don't fall in love. You know, like there are kind
And
of...
she bursts in on him in a van with groupies.
Were you watching Almost Famous?
It's like almost famous like show.
Not a good show.
Sucks, yeah. Don't watch it.
But, you know, so there are, and like similarly, like with men who like are truck drivers or like work in seasonal industries, you know, this idea that everybody's like sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they probably have a girlfriend in another state kind of stuff. And I wonder how much that informs us.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we've heard a few examples on this podcast of couples where, or maybe there's only one that's coming to mind, but a couple where like only the man was poly, like they were poly, but it was really only the man who was
Actively practicing.
actively
that's true.
having other
Right.
partners. And I think there's obviously the, you know, pervasive idea that, you know, men's sex drives are just like these things that we have to sort of like
Cater to.
cater to. And so I could imagine that that's a factor here, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so much more information and context I want about all of this, but it is really pretty fascinating how wrong I was. You know?
I'm always fascinated by how wrong you are. No, yeah, I was surprised by that too. I don't really know exactly what to make of the idea that like it's consistent across all of those categories, other than to say like there are just like a lot of different presentations of what polyamory might look like, and you know.
This is maybe a theme that's emerging for me, is that there's more going on in this culture and in this country regarding polyamory, whether it's like people's internal thoughts about it or their actual practices that we don't have access to and that there are no representations of.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of guesswork. Because
Yeah.
I do suspect that there's more of it happening than we think or realize, more people who are interested in it than we think or realize, and more practices of it that look like really different than maybe the kind of like coastal elite queer Instagram culture of it.
Right.
Frankly.
Yeah, which does like compel me to like be more argumentative, like argue more for acceptance of it as like you know, there's always this thing about like, is it an identity like similar to queerness or something like that, or is it more of a practice? And like, I guess whether, regardless of what you think, it's like clearly not just like a trend. Right, amongst a certain group of people. Like there may be trends towards polyamory amongst certain groups of people, but all told, taking the entire population of this country, like, is just kind of showing up everywhere in different ways.
Honestly, if I had like a wish that I could just grant that was totally absurd, but it was like the wish of my heart as like a queer polyamorous therapist person, it would be that everyone just had to come forth and talk about like the infidelities that they've experienced, whether they like experienced them as the person who committed the infidelity or not, that we had to talk about like the off-script relationships that we've had, that there was like some way that we could just like all get it out on the same day, like mutually assured destruction. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like there's
we all like write it on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, and then like trade envelopes.
Exactly. Everybody trades envelopes because I just know, like in my heart of hearts, I just know that all of us actually have way more in common when it comes to standard deviation
Right.
than we accept or talk about or think about or could ever be captured in one of these surveys.
Yeah.
And I just dream of what it would feel like for us to be on the other side of that day, you know, and like how good I think it would actually feel.
Yeah.
Maybe that's naive, but.
You want to go?
Oh, yeah.
Give us another one, Sarah.
Okay, let's
Nobody's
see.
asked me any questions yet.
I'll ask you some.
Oh, yeah.
Oh gosh, there's so many good ones. Okay, you want one, Alex?
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna go over to this other section. Section. Woof. Edit that out. Okay. This one, just professionally interested. to set this up, this comes from Shrimp Teeth. So all of the stats that I'm talking about in today's episode come from Shrimp Teeth. They run like a resource coaching practice around non-monogamy, polyamory. I'm a big fan. I follow them on Instagram, and they were the ones who conducted all of these surveys. In this one, Shrimp Teeth is asking people who identify as women about their experience with men. People who identify as men. So this is asking women about their experience with men in polyamorous relationships. And the question is, ladies, is he in therapy?
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, and these are poly people.
These are poly people.
Okay.
And we're asking women who are in polyamorous relationships with men, ladies,
what
is he in
percentage
therapy?
say the man's in therapy?
What percentage?
I would go with a hot 50. Half.
A hot 50. He says half.
Half.
That would be
Jess?
hot.
These are poly men.
Yeah, they're poly men, so I'm going to say, significantly better than the Gen Pop and go with 15.
And so it's somewhere in between there.
AKA two sad trombones.
Two sad trombones. Somewhere in between 50 and 15. And I'm trying to actually quickly parse out the numbers. So I'm just going to read them out here. And we can all do it together transparently. Ladies, is he in therapy? 23% say, I am, he needs to be too. 17% said, yes, but I had to push.
Okay.
26% said, yes, he prioritizes his growth.
Okay.
And 33% say, no, he refuses. So if I'm adding those up, the yes is 26 plus 17, which is 42, right?
43.
43%.
So yeah,
That's actually
that's
pretty
close.
close. I'm going to give you a
close.
ding.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
43% of,
But some of them were coerced.
But
17% it was, and I have heard this before. This is probably an entire episode, y'all.
Yeah.
But women who will not date polyamorous men unless they're in therapy, which is absolutely a trend. And I have never had that as an ultimatum. And I have also not dated a polyamorous man who wasn't in therapy in probably 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I could see why you wouldn't. Because then they'd just be trying to get free therapy.
Yeah, right. Hell no.
But what do we make of this? I'd be so curious to know what the standard population answer to this is, but I think it's very low, would be my guess by comparison.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably, so the 33% said he refuses.
Yeah.
So, it's got to be much higher percentage of the general population would refuse, right? God, it's I mean, there's access issues to talk about too.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And this is,
And cultural.
And I do think it's getting better, know,
Oh. I just looked up the statistic on how many men in the general population are
in therapy.
Now, that's my question. What percentage, y'all?
12.
5.
Spot on, Alex.
Oh, really?
12%, 12.1%
good.
as of 2021 in...
Yeah, 2021. I do think,
Good
I
for us.
suspect it's 12 though. I suspect that pandemic might have increased numbers a little bit.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely sure.
They're practically giving away therapy. now
I'm
if you have health insurance.
sorry that I'm so cynical and salty about this, but I really my anecdotal evidence of the dating pool. I don't think I ever dated a man who was in therapy unless I made him go to therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of making men go to therapy, and I'm mad about it. So
the myth here would probably be that all polyamorous men are sensitive guys who are deep in their internal explorations and are in therapy.
Yeah, I would say it's complicated. Like what I'm finding out here in real time is that the percentage is higher among polyamorous men. I mean, these are not like perfectly clean statistics, but if we're just like looking at these numbers, and I'm sure that it would bear out that polyamorous men are more likely to be in therapy, or maybe it's just those who are in relationships with women who follow shrimp teeth. I'm not sure.
Right.
That like we have to kind of acknowledge that. Yeah. And also
that's like more our demographic.
Exactly.
People, sure.
Exactly. And also, no, not all of them are, and still the numbers are going to be lower. And I would stake my graduate degree on this. Lower among men than women in all categories.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you guys want to move on to STIs?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right, Jessica. Non-monogamous people more likely to get STIs, have STIs than monogamous people, or the same?
Oh, I think the same. I think less. I mean, like, because having listened to every episode of this podcast,
all sorts of people.
Yeah, and you are telling the truth about it to yourself and your partners, unlike many monogamous people.
Yeah, totally. This was from that Kinsey study. Also, poly people are exactly the same prevalence of STI safety or of STIs as monogamous people. Let me see. There's like a little section about it.
It's worth saying that one of the statistics that I had here was how often do you get tested? This is again from Shrimp Teeth, so we're asking polyamorous people.
Yeah. Okay, follow up. Follow up.
Interesting.
And I'm curious, what percentage would you say of these folks said we get tested routinely every 6 months-ish?
And this is self-reporting.
Self-reporting
in
polyamorous
an anonymous
people.
public
Right.
forum. So
Very
it's
high
anonymous,
percentage.
but still, people are lying. What percentage say what?
That we get tested every 6 months-ish or routinely.
I would say like about half of people would probably say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think most.
Yep, 55%.
What are the other options?
24% said they get tested before sleeping with someone new. 19% said they get tested only if it seems necessary. 3% said testing, I can't remember the last time. So 55% said routinely or every 6 months.
Bullshit.
Yeah, there wasn't an option for I tell a new partner test.
I don't think that many people are probably outright lying about it, but more than 3% of people are like not probably doing it, you know. But probably just skip that question.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're calling bullshit on that 3% number?
Yeah, that just seems low to me for a number of people who are like just
Interesting.
being kind of chaotic or whatever and not. And also like it's hard. I mean, I don't want to say it's hard to get tested, but it's not like easy. Access to. I mean, same thing for therapy, right? All of these are like basic fundamental healthcare things that are not as accessible as they should be.
And I appreciate the comparison, like the back-to-back comparison of therapy and STI testing, because I think in both cases, you're talking about a population where those activities are higher, or at least according to the statistics that we're looking at, they're higher, because these are people who are in non-traditional relationships where they're going to be more aware of their dynamics, their behavior. They're going to be talking about it more kind of by definition. And so presumably seeking support or resources accordingly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's funny with STI testing, like my personal experience has been like the way you sort of like people talk about it or you talk about it with a partner is like, yeah, I've been tested, I'm good. And the experience I've had when I go to the doctor and say like, can I get tested? Is they're like, well, do you think you have gonorrhea? And I'm like, well, no, like, I don't understand. Like, what are the magic words?
Push back on that.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. And they want to know, they always want to know some juicy
They sure do. Yeah.
I mean, the way they don't push back, or you don't get pushback, the way you don't get pushback is by telling them that you and your husband are non-monogamous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it change that experience?
Definitely.
Yeah. They're just like, ew, like, yeah, we'll test you for everything.
Weirdly, I don't know what this, well, maybe I do know what this says, but weirdly, there'll always be like, oh, well, you're reporting your behavior and you haven't had sex with any men without condoms, and you have sex with women, right? Except for your husband. I have sex with my husband without condoms. And then they're like, let's get you tested because he's out there sleeping with other people.
Oh, dang.
Like, it feels like that's actually the moment when they're like, okay, you're at risk.
If he might be stepping out on you.
Yeah, I mean, and we are,
That's
by definition,
interesting.
both stepping out on each other.
Yeah.
So it's
not the stepping out, it's the, well, they don't believe that, those bastards don't believe that I'm actually using condoms.
Right.
No. I'm sure that's kind of what it is, because I'm sure it's pretty common. Yeah, so this says, although those engaged in polyamory have more sexual partners, research shows that they practice safer sex strategies and report similar rates of contracting STIs as those engaged in monogamy. So, like, non-monogamy, more partners, higher risk, but better practices. And so it pretty much evens out. Right.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Good job.
But it's like a lot higher risk, really. Like, if you imagine the difference. So I guess that just as an endorsement of like how good of a job people are doing of protecting themselves. Like, if the rates of STIs among non-monogamous people is the same as the rates among nominally monogamous people, like, that means we're doing a good job of protecting ourselves.
Yeah,
Good job.
Adding myself in
And ourselves and our partners.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another sex one.
6.
Yikes.
Cut that out.
Jessica's definitely not going to cut out any of the stuff that we asked her to cut out.
Every
this
time you say
episode.
cut that out, I'm like, oh, that's so cute. I'm going to
Find and replace sex.
Okay, this one, I'm going to ask you this, Jessica.
Okay.
This is, again, shrimp teeth. The question is, be honest. Are you having as much sex as you expected when you first decided to open up your relationship? So should I give you the categories and then you tell me which one you think is the winner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
More. I'm drowning in body fluids. Yes, it's exactly what I'd hoped. No. More processing feels than sexy play. No. Only my pals seem to get any peach emoji.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, my prediction in the past, or like before I had really dived into learning about this lifestyle, I might have been like, I was all like, sex parties, that's clearly what this is all about. Everybody's just fucking all the time. Having spent 2 years with you guys,
Oh God, this is going to be
making this
embarrassing.
podcast. No, but I have learned that there is definitely some fun sex that sounds like it's happening, but I think there's also a lot of processing. So I feel like the third one spoke to me.
That's the one that you heard.
Yeah, I feel like that was the thing.
And
Processing.
more processing feels than sexy play. Do you want to guess what percentage of respondents said that? I'm passing this over to you, Alex. What percentage of respondents said
47. I just always guess 50%, I guess.
that? Yeah. 55%.
Oh, wow.
55. I was shocked by that one. I was like, okay, I do feel a little less alone.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. It doesn't
So
really feel specific to poly. Like, it's also just like, this is what I feel like,
and it's
right?
talking about the idea, what you thought was going to be happening versus what was actually happening, right? Yeah, and
Yeah.
the fantasy, it's just,
And this is such a perfect counterpoint to what we were talking about earlier with the eternal FOMO of everybody having better sex
Right.
than you and more sex and like all of the, cinematic sex, and looking at this, that, people who reported I'm having more sex than I expected, 16%. 18% said, yes, it's what I'd hoped for. 11% said, no, it seems like only my pals seem to get any booty. And then, no, more processing feels than sexy play, 55%. But I think to your point, Jessica, this is humanity, y'all.
Right.
I really do think that this is just what it feels like to be a human being.
Right.
yeah.
That much of life is about, like, processing your experiences, interpersonal dynamics, like the challenging emotions that arise around intimacy.
Yep.
And some of it is about like really peak experiences. But what would life be if it was all peak experiences? How boring.
Right.
Yeah, that is a good.
The trade-off for every peak experience.
55% of processing.
A lot.
Right. Yeah, and I guess it's a good reminder to like not have whatever. I don't know if it counts as higher expectations for yourself or high expectations for like what it should look like. You know, you're not alone if it is not a lot of fun time party sex.
And also, fun time party sex is great, but I would say that is one facet of what is great about being in sexually intimate, emotionally intimate relationships and community with people. Like, yeah, you want that to be a part of it, but if that was all of it, I don't know. Maybe that'd be what some people are in for. I think it'd be boring.
Yeah, fantasy is fun.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got one. This was from a study in the journal Sexologies.
Ooh.
Shout out to that being the coolest academic journal name ever.
Sexologies.
Sexologies, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna like order a subscription to Sexologies.
So much better than.
It'll just be in my little box in the admin office at work.
I really hope everyone is picturing you reading these studies, like in elbow patches with a bubble pipe, and there's like glasses in your office with like a bookshelf behind you. Alex, would you tell us where you were reading these studies?
Well, on the internet in our child's bedroom. Right, yeah, okay, good point. I was on a little couch with some Squishmallows, yeah, by my side. That's where I like to read my Sexologies. So Sexologies explored, there's no numbers for this, but they just explored, like, kind of tried to, like, essentially, like, do an academic brainstorm of the reasons that people engage in polyamory. So I want you guys to try and think of different reasons that people might engage in polyamory, what either things that they'd state or kind of things that just would sort of be there as possible different reasons.
Okay.
And I guess it's kind of coming off the last question where we're like talking about sex, right?
And these are the actual reasons, or these are the reasons that people speculate are the reasons? Like, this is what poly people say about themselves?
No, it's not based on surveys.
Okay.
I think it's based on kind of like yeah, I don't really understand the methodology, to be honest.
Okay.
I think that it was things that had been referenced in different other journal articles and stuff like that.
Okay.
So just, you want us to just like kind of
Reasons for polyamory.
say some stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll tell you.
Failing sex life.
So there's one that's fulfillment of needs not met in a monogamous relationship. So those needs could be sexual, they could be otherwise.
What about
see how
like
many you can get? There's 8 listed here.
like traveling for work? Work that
Long distance.
long distance. There you go. Geographic separation.
What about...
I feel like that could be one, but it's not listed here.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think maybe this is more like, think more in the lifestyle, like, why would I decide that I wanted to be polyamorous? And
like,
I mean, that's like
kink,
logistical.
right?
Yeah, kink. So, yeah, I feel like this is that's kind of related to, that could be fulfillment of needs not met in a monogamous relationship.
Oh, right.
But there's also one that is desire for sexual diversity. So
Standard
we've gotten
deviation.
the like kind of sex ones,
Okay.
right?
And queerness, I guess, would fall into...
That's another one.
Okay.
Exploration of
Okay.
minority identities.
Got it.
Sexual fluidity and bisexuality.
Okay.
What else you got?
I would say, I mean, I don't feel like... Maybe this is like a weird one to say, but it comes to mind because I experience it a lot, and it's my experience too. Getting married young.
I got married young. Yeah, this would do better as a Family Feud. Survey said.
Yeah.
Let's see, getting married young. Okay, I'm going to give you that one. There is one that is personal growth and autonomy.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you're talking about there,
Yeah.
right? Like wanting to establish your own
Identity.
like, individual identity outside of
Marriage, religion,
yeah.
value systems that you were kind of like raised in but aren't yours. Things like that. Yeah.
I like that.
Wow. So how many are left that we haven't gotten?
4. There are 4 left. You've gotten half.
4
of them, yeah.
that we haven't gotten.
Interesting.
And I say like a few of them are like discernibly different than anything that you've said.
Boredom, fun.
Boredom/fun.
You know, one of those, just like, I was bored in my life, or I was looking to have some more fun.
Yeah. Spice things up.
No, I don't really have that here.
These are some high-minded answers.
Wow.
No, they are very high-minded. I mean, there's one that is, this is the one that they would feel like is similar, identity development. It says identity development and polyamory. I don't really know what the polyamory means. I mean, that's what we're talking about. But that's kind of overlapping with probably sexual identity.
Yeah.
I feel like it might be separate.
We've maybe covered that between the like getting married young, exploring queerness, like that's identity
Autonomy,
development. I get
yes.
that. Yeah. So there's stuff beyond that we haven't come up with.
Boy, I don't want to say I'm stumped, but
Yeah. If you want to give up, I can tell you the rest, or you can.
Yeah.
I think I'm stumped.
Yeah.
Give us one, and then let's see if it unlocks some other
Or
chamber.
give us a hint or something.
Number 4, and then again, they're not ranked, but let's just say number 4 because it sounds cool. Number 4, expression of political values.
Political values.
Yeah.
Dang, what the hell are they talking about?
I guess like people are.
Like
I mean, we
the
can go over here
Democrats?
and-
Yeah, I'm like so curious what they mean by political values in
I can
that.
find this section.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean,
guess depends.
I feel like, yeah, right. Talking about like polygamy.
Right. I'm like,
Polyamory enables individuals to express their autonomy, and in some non-monogamous individuals, it is related to the expression of political values and rebellious values as part of a struggle against social conventions.
fuck yeah.
Like counterculture. Yeah. Yeah.
Political values that guide individuals are related to general human values. Okay, some members of polyamorous communities practice non-monogamy as a means of expressing feminist ideological positions. Identified political lesbianism, quote unquote, in women who choose to live with a woman not primarily because they are lesbians, but because they're feminists, first of all, and so it is quite natural for them to become lesbians.
What year was this survey done in? What year is this?
Well, that's referencing a 2000. This is like a compilation of different things. That's from 2003. Yeah.
I was like, that feels dated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that it goes on to say like polyamory. This is like I think ethical slut stuff. I think like polyamory began to be discussed in the 1990s, facilitated by several waves of feminism, heteronormativity, and at one point monogamy. Monogamy as a normative form of male dominance through the institution of marriage began to be questioned. And that's from in the 90s.
Yeah. Okay.
This is, can I just like get in here with something? I definitely get the sense that there is like a wave of non-monogamy and polyamory where like a lot of that language is present from like late 90s, early 2000s that to me, if not explicitly, implicitly suggests that men are being non-monogamous in an unethical way. And now let's give women access to that and or like change the paradigm so that that's no longer it's no longer that women are kind of like at home with the kids while men are stepping out, right? So I just kind of like throw that out there because I feel like that is relevant, important, and kind of a moment.
Yeah.
In a way.
Feminist critiques of monogamy emphasize the implications of men's ownership of women, institutionalization of rape and domestic violence against women, the maintenance of patriarchy in the domestic sphere. So yeah, it's kind of like part of a larger, dismantling of those sort of like the patriarchal oppression inherent in marriage and monogamy
and that kind of assumes in a lot of that language that relationships between men and women are inherently kind of exploitative.
Right.
As they exist.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say that this like that persists, right? Because like think about how many people you see on dating apps and stuff like that, like dealing with like one penis policy stuff.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of like men who are out there being like, I want to be non-monogamous, but I don't want you to be, right?
And there are a lot of people, to Jessica's point, who are practicing a kind of non-monogamy where like the man is a lot more active in the non-monogamy, to be sure. Yeah.
Okay, remaining ones. Does that open any other guesses or ideas? I feel like there's one more kind of big one here that.
I'm dying to know.
Yeah, me too. Just lay it on us.
Number 6 was the need to belong to a community.
Oh shit! Community building.
Individuals join or form communities in order to meet people who share the same values and the same attitude to forming relationships. Because polyamorous individuals differ from monogamous individuals in their attitude toward forming relationships, they may have an amplified need to form their own community in which they can experience feelings of belonging. So I feel like that's kind of actually the reverse.
May I say that there's something about the wording of the survey that makes me feel like it wasn't written for like a general population to respond, or like it's written for a polyamorous, like a subset of the polyamorous community almost.
Yeah, it is in sexologies.
Yeah, I guess it's in sexologies.
Right.
Good point.
So the audience is people who study sex.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
And so I think they're trying to get more to the deeper, like sociological. It's not the things that people would say.
Right.
It's like the deeper sociological or psychological elements. And then the last one is psychodynamic reasons, where they talk a whole bunch about like attachment.
Yeah, and dismantling codependency. I do think that is like increasingly being identified as one of the reasons why people are drawn to non-monogamy as a way of identifying and dismantling codependent dynamics.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
That's fascinating. That is like very hopeful and cool.
Yeah. A lot of more reasons than you would have come up with off the top of your head. Yeah.
And there's like...
Yeah.
Then we did come up with off the top of our heads.
Well, and I feel like a lot of them are
like
kind of...
Jessica's is like traveling for work.
No, but I do, like, in real life, I think it's very common that couples might decide, well, okay, I have to go live across the country from grad school, or they will have, like, a conference rule or whatever. Like, that is...
Oh, yeah, that was like, I feel like that was in
monogamish.
Succession
There
a
you
tiny
go.
bit. When in the episode last night...
I haven't
Spoiler
watched it
alert,
yet.
no, it's not a spoiler at all.
Okay.
Connor's just like talking about how he wants to go to Slovenia, and him and Willa are going to like live apart. They don't like talk about them sleeping with other people, but they're totally like giving a nod to like, it'll be better for our marriage to like be apart.
Spice things up. I think they actually used the term spice things up. So, yeah, interesting. There you go. There's your media representation
Perfect.
that you're
That's all I get.
eager
15
for.
seconds.
15 seconds of a veiled comment.
Yeah. Anything else? You got another one? I got one more, but we can...
I kind of like ending on that note, except I'm curious, what is the other one that you had?
Okay, I got one more that is about jealousy.
Hook it up.
Non-monogamous people more likely to report issues of jealousy than monogamous ones?
This is a true or false?
No.
Less likely?
False.
False. What's false?
Well, okay, this is
Who do you think has
interesting.
more?
We have data from this like I think about you guys, and I think about Madeline and Zach sitting here on this podcast last time, and you would like your intercouple experiences are like exactly the opposite of each other.
That's
Right.
right.
Exactly
Oh,
that.
in terms
Not,
of gender.
you know, no. Sorry, just like we talked a lot about how they didn't have any jealousy, right? And I'm not saying that you guys are super jealous, but you have struggled with that.
yeah.
So I do
right?
feel like this is where definitions of jealousy are helpful because I think that all couples struggle with that. And I think it's like, are you talking about sexual jealousy, romantic jealousy, time jealousy, interest jealousy? Like, I guess I am personally invested in this idea that we can like depathologize jealousy and recognize that it's like a really normal feeling to have in any and all of your relationships, and one that you can like name, identify, move through, get support in, like any other you might experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess maybe the question, if you think about the survey question being like, is jealousy an issue in your relationship?
Is jealousy an
Relationship.
issue
I don't know if
in
this
your
is exactly what the
relationship?
question was, but imagine they asking that to non-monogamous people and to monogamous people. Is it more likely that monogamous people would say jealousy is an issue in their relationship, or more likely that non-monogamous people would say jealousy is an issue in their relationship?
It's a trick question. No. I mean, I think like it seems like it would be in a non-monogamous relationship because your partner is sleeping with other people. But I bet I'm going to get the sad trombone.
What do you think, Sarah?
I mean, I think just from my experience working with couples as a therapist, and also just anecdotally in my life and in my own family,
Yeah.
fuck no. Like, monogamous people struggle with jealousy all over the fucking place.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's not, what can be, I don't know if funny is the right word, but it's like a monogamous couple can have a crazy ass fight about, like, you know, someone liking an ex-girlfriend's fucking Instagram post.
Right.
That's fucking jealousy.
Yeah.
And maybe a non-monogamous couple is going to be like, oh man, you're going to go away on a romantic getaway for 3 nights to a place I wanted to go to and have beautiful sex in the woods with someone else? Fuck off. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
So, yeah,
You can't use the satin sheets this weekend.
Right. The satin sheets are in the wash because you had a sex party on them and I wasn't there. Yeah, it's about the same.
I totally
it's the
agree.
same.
Amy Moore's,
Oh, it's
yeah,
the
I feel like we should try to
same.
get Amy Moore's on the podcast because
Yeah.
she's doing a lot of cool
Let's
research.
do it.
So it's about the same. So this is kind of interesting. Research conducted using twin studies. Just don't worry about that. They're not twins, I don't think.
Sorry. Oh, God, edit that out.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
So, sexy identical twins completed a study. No, it suggests that the propensity for romantic and sexual jealousy is somewhat heritable. Not inherited, but heritable, indicating that a person-level factor independent of any relationship. Indicating a person-level factor independent of any relationship arrangement. So basically,
Right.
I'm going to be if have a propensity for jealousy, I'm going to be jealous in a monogamous relationship, and I'm going to be jealous in a non-monogamous relationship.
Right.
And if I don't, then I'm going to be the same in different relationship presentations as well.
Well, and I would love to just offer up a personal anecdote and experiential arc here that is very meaningful to me and like kind of hard to talk about. But prior to us becoming non-monogamous, I was absolutely adamant that I was not a jealous person. Like, I really had this kind of like fixed identity that I didn't go in for that. And I think that had something to do with my own experience in my family and a lot of like the women in my family just being really like jealous and being stepped out on a lot and like really worried and hyper vigilant about like male sexual behavior. And I just wanted to be like, no, I don't think about that. I don't do that. I can't. Like, it just seemed so like this kind of vulnerability that I couldn't even like begin to explore. When you and I became non-monogamous, it was like a fucking jealousy nuclear bomb went off. And maybe it was before that. I mean, like, we've talked about this on the podcast. Like, there was the experience of like emotional infidelity, and that like began a much bigger conversation that resulted a couple of years later in us opening up. But I would think of that kind of like 2 to 3 year period as like the jealousy nuclear bomb going off, where all of the times that I was like, absolutely not, I don't experience this emotion, I can't go there, it's like had been suppressed.
Right.
And then it was just like everywhere all the time. It was a really scary experience for me. And I think in ways I'm still like kind of working through what I've learned about myself in the process of really identifying that I do struggle with jealousy and I do struggle with codependency, and like struggling with that and naming it is actually an example of like strength and resilience, and being really inflexible and being like, no, I don't do that, was me being afraid. But I guess I just say that because I think about jealousy a lot and about my own experience with it and how I self-reported.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think this is a complicated one that can't really be captured very well in a study, because like then that makes me think about like there were definitely periods of our relationship where I felt intense jealousy, and like I think what changed was more like situational, which would kind of fly in the face of this thing that we just said, that it like follows a person no matter what kind of relationships they're in. Like that might be true for some people, but it really seems like does your relationship feel secure or insecure? And we probably try to like boil that down a lot in individualist psychology to, you know, attachment style and stuff like that. But there's a lot of other factors that aren't just who you are that are like, you know, is your relationship threatened? Like there, like you were just referencing, there are compelling rational reasons to feel insecure and jealous in a relationship. Like when there's been infidelity committed, or like the relationship is threatened by,
or when you maybe are like socioeconomically, politically, and culturally less more vulnerable or less powerful, like when you have a woman with really young children. I also think jealousy is such a fascinating term, and I think we should do a big episode about this and get some people in to talk about it, because I find it kind of flat in the way we think about it. I would argue that I feel more stable in my relationships because I am in relationship to my own jealousy, right?
Right.
And because I can, like, I'm aware of it, I can talk about it, I can, like, sort of discern between what pieces of it are for me to kind of own and process elsewhere and what pieces of it might be for me to take to a partner. That actually ultimately has made me feel more stable in my relationships. But, like, in a survey response, it would probably look like me reporting more jealousy now since we've been non-monogamous.
Because you're more aware.
Than prior.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, there's a lot here. It's a real... it's kind of a figure eight for me or something.
And how much it impacts you would probably be determined by, like, how much time and effort you'd spent, like, learning to understand and process jealousy and, like, So
I love this because the Mythbuster is that there's any demographic of people that experience jealousy more in terms of, like, monogamous and non-monogamous. I love busting that myth.
Yeah.
And I hear in this answer in our discussion of it that there's something kind of unsatisfying about how we define jealousy that deserves more exploration.
Yeah, I loved what you said about the different sort of types of jealousy that might exist. And I think this is a whole new episode, and I know what we can call it. Hey, jealousy.
All right, cliffhanger for season 3.
We'll be spending the next few months trying to license Gin Blossom songs.
That's right.
Okay, well, that is the end of our Polyamory Mythbusters episode and the end of season 2 of Mistakes Were Made. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to go on a break for, I don't know, a couple months or something like that.
Yeah, summer break.
But if you want to follow what we're doing over the summer, you can check out Sarah's therapy and writing website.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Yep. And you can check out Bloodstar, the music project that we've been working on. And you can listen to Jessica's day job is producing Making Contact, a fabulous show on not National Public Radio, but
it's on many NPR stations and available as a podcast.
Hit us with that great new slogan that you all came up with, mission statement.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Audio storytelling for a more just world.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Okay, so that's Making Contact, and we'll be back in a few months with more episodes. Follow us on Instagram in the meantime. If we get some more followers, then we'll post some content during the break, right? Maybe we'll do some more little graphics about stuff we've been thinking about, reference the things we've been reading,
polls,
cute
questions?
pictures of us, our cat, maybe cat pictures, polls. Yeah.
And I'd love to hear from you all about what you'd like to hear about in season 3. So get out there, get on the dating apps, go have some cute dates, make some mistakes, and tell us what you want to talk about come fall.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. And hey, thanks, Jessica and Alex, for another great season. This was really fun, and I love you both.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Bye.